I was interested, I was reading yesterday that Yoko Ono's got a show just about to open at the Serpentine Gallery in Kensington Gardens, and she was being interviewed by Simon Sharma, the historian, and she says, "For me it is important that the things we make have a reason and a sense of humour, and there was no reason in abstract expressionism or a sense of humour." Discuss, yes.
Yes, you could say that again. But then again, it wasn't that may be Yoko, God bless her, her view of things, but on the other hand, one could say, I believe in art that has no reason and defies any sense of order or something like that. Or, you know, I don't care whether, actually, as a matter of fact, I can laugh at some abstract expressionist paintings. I don't think yes.
Yeah. What did you say? We didn't hear that, John.
I said most of Yoko Ono.
But the Yoko doesn't mind if I laugh at them. But I can tell you that some of the tough guys who did those paintings wouldn't like it.
Yeah, they really wouldn't be impressed.
They wouldn't be impressed. But I reserve the right, you see, because I am the person who is making meaning when that painting is in front of me. You talked about, you know, the quintessential abstract expressionist, Jackson Pollock. I don't know how long ago you were married, but it can't be that long.
50 years.
Oh, yeah, well then in that case, 50 years, Pollock would have been still quite fresh and in terms of his impact. But partly what I think we're concerned with here tonight is that thing that you said you were kind of frightened of it. You know, what you're frightened of is that you're kind of losing control in a way.
Absolutely.
Not knowing what it was you were supposed to do. And nobody whispered in your ear, as I might have done. And I've been the lucky man. Nobody whispered in your ear and said, there's nothing to be frightened of. And you are not supposed to think or feel anything. You are supposed to be yourself.
Yeah.
That's the greatness. If Pollock has greatness, it has to do with that complete, in the best painting, the complete rejection, the complete loss, if you like, of any kind of figurative or symbolic handrail. All you have is what's in front of you. And given that, it gave you the freedom to become or think what you like. That's why he named them number 1, number 2, and then he began to give them slightly sentimental titles like Lavender Mist and so on.
Yeah.
But okay, you can feel what you like about the Lavender Mist.
But you can. But why make a painting then? If you can. I mean, I can feel like myself when I'm just, you know, looking at the wall or sitting on a chair looking at the desk. Why make a painting if it is simply whatever anyone else brings to it? I mean, there's got to be an assertion of something, isn't there?
You can't bring anything to it because, as I said, you can if you want, but you're quite right. Then what's the point of it? It's only if you speak or write intelligently that it begins then. Roland Barthes said this. You know, actually, the critic has the license to say what he likes up to a point, but you can't say just what you like and expect to be taken seriously. What my point is not that you simply take yourself to it, but you don't take fear to it. You take or worrying about what it's supposed to mean when it isn't supposed to mean anything. It's supposed to mean actually what it is that you bring to it. But as I said earlier, what you bring to it isn't just some kind of blank nothing. You bring to it, for example, to Pollock, you brought all the history of painting that you knew about. One of the reasons you were frightened is because it seemed to contradict all the things that you knew about. Whereas in fact,
I didn't know where to engage in my life with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One of the great things about Pollock and others was that, as abstract painters, was that actually they knew where they were coming from. The painting take their place within not just the discourse around them, what people say about them and write about them, but also the paintings are in a discourse of painting itself. If you paint a black square, then you're saying something about every painting before that one that had something in it. You're negating it. And if you're doing that, then you're saying something about the history of art. Of course, a lot of art, and this is something I think, Sam, where I think you'd agree with me, that the meaning, or not the meaning, the meanings we take to art has a great deal to do with the art we've seen and our sense of the discourse of painting up to the point at which you see this particular one. But I still defy you when I say, yes, you have a perfect right. You can, as a matter of fact, you've got a perfect right to look at your wall if you like.
Yes,
but I know that you mentioned earlier that
when hungover.
Yeah.
But I remember shortly after that, I went to hear the new husband of a great friend of mine who was an international cellist. And I was invited to go and meet him with her, plus a lot of the other musicians who are also international musicians in the green room. And I remember feeling quite overcome by this. And I just said that I just absolutely loved it, and it, you know, it rang in my heart. And he said, that's really all I want to hear. And all his mates, all his peers were busy saying, I've never heard an interpretation like that before, and saying all sorts of technical things. But he was so helpful, just saying that where I'd come out of my heart in my reaction was actually what he wanted to hear. So that has stood me in good stead. But actually, when you know, you're grappling with some more techniques and things, and you're feeling ignorant about them, I would like to know more about the whys and the hows. So I'm still struggling with that. Patrick?
Can I just say, I'm just very interested in the different reaction to music that you had to visual art, yeah. Because as a 16-year-old boy, finding life very difficult in the real world, socially and in other ways, when I saw my first Jackson Pollock painting, I thought, wow, what a relief, that's great. Thank God the world can be like that. And then it stayed like that ever since.
Well, I was brought up in Gilbert and Sullivan, so you can see why.
Yes. But I wonder whether it was because it was a visual thing rather than in other words, rather than the music, because the visual is frightening in some way.
Okay, we've done quite a lot of talking, and I'm wondering what you're all feeling. What's the response? Who agrees or just doesn't agree? What do you think? What does abstract painting mean to you and creativity? Yes, in the blue shirt.
Yeah, one of the things that came to mind straight away was when you were talking about the titles of the works. One of the abstract expressionists, Cy Twombly, interestingly, with the titles, he would make them contradict what was actually in the work quite often, so that the viewer would almost be destabilized, because our whole culture is information, we stick word for word, if you like, with language, and like poetry, it's a lucid language, it has multiple dimensions. And so he did it precisely to kind of force you to engage in the picture itself. So you couldn't see if the title said Spain, you couldn't see Spain in the picture. So you were forced then to look in a different way at the picture, to start to engage in the picture for the picture's sake, as opposed to just assigning the meaning from the title.
You might have seen a bullfight, a nasty bullfight down the bottom there, couldn't you?
But I think that's because so much often our attention is always drawn to the title.
Are you a painter yourself?
I do.
Do you title your work?
Yes, I do. But I was just interested now because your work about Syria was quite rigid to that. And it almost can limit the viewer, because they look at that and then they are trying to connect Syria to the work, so there's no space for them to engage in it anymore.
That's right. I agree with that. Yeah.
I accept that. I do accept that.
It's very annoying that you work in a gallery and all the paintings are untitled. It's incredibly difficult.
Well, I think what's more annoying now, the current trend where I guess the first thing you see when you go into many large museums now is the curator's name likes this size, the artist this size, and then you come to the artworks and there's a painting this size and there's a piece of text this size. It's like, we're the only ones who know anything. You're all stupid, and here's what you should get out of this painting.
Exactly.
That's not the way painting should be, but it's a kind of fashion at the moment.
I think that's really interesting observation.
Yeah, yeah.
Mel?
I'm reminded of my friend John Hoyland, who died last year, and what paintings can mean. Abstract paintings might mean to people who encounter them. It is illustrated. It can be illustrated by a story that John can tell us in a minute about a painting in this room, which has to do with John Hoyland. All will be clear. But John began his life determined, you see, that the paintings would have no referential, no meaning of that, no kind of expressive or referential. So all his titles, from about 1960 through to about the middle 70s, and he made a lot of paintings, are all entitled by the last date in which he worked on them. So the title would be 1963, 4770. Now, I've written 2 books on John Hoyland, and I can tell you the absolute agony of trying to write a book in which you say the vivid colours, 4 lines, can be contrasted with the dull pallor, this is not how I write, of 1964. And then people begin to look for them, but you know if you have this, they look, there's 179. But they're actually looking for the painting, even if it's reproduced with the title, because of these types. So that was because John was a young abstractionist, brought up in the tradition that came straight from New York, of people like Jackson, Pollock, and Rothko, blue over green, red over orange and blue, or Jackson Pollock, number 1, 1948. Number 2, 1949, because it's the second painting made in 1949, and not to be confused with the second painting made after number 1, 1948, and so on. So John was rigorous. That's what we call rigor in those days. And then, at a certain point in the mid-70s, John thought, my painting is about all things, as you might say. About is a problematic word. This painting is about is a very problematic statement. There's a sense in which, you see, painting can't be about anything. It is what it is. It's about you. He decided that all the things that really he loved in his life, he wanted to have reflected in his paintings. So he began to give them titles. He absolutely loved it. He took titles from Borges, titles from poems, titles from so on, titles that occurred to him: Black Dragon, Nighttime, Dark Sun, Monster from Mars, or whatever, whatever he felt like calling it, he did. And incidentally, Gillian Ayres, another great abstract painter, doesn't title the paintings until they're finished, and then she quite often asks friends to give them titles. Oh, I like that one, Jim, it's got lots of lemons. I think you should call it oranges and lemons. So she does, or she said, no, we'll call it velvet and lemons. So, and her actually has that kind of playful thing. John would give his titles in that way. And I can just, sometime earlier today, someone said, you must read this little bit that John wrote.
Must have in every library.
Yeah, it's a terrific book.
So he decided all his titles came from this, and he said, he's given what I call a comically random and marvellously precise list of his own subjects. We all know now that subject is also a very problematic word when it comes to a painting. So this is what he said. He said, among things in nature to which equivalents, as he called them, are discovered in the painting, in the fantasy of his paintings, are, and this is John's own list, shields, masks, tools, artifacts, mirrors, Avebury Circle, swimming underwater, views from plains, volcanoes, mountains, waterfalls, rocks, graffiti, stains, damp walls, pavements, puddles, damp walls like the one you're looking at.
Exactly, yeah.
Damp walls, pavements, puddles, the cosmos inside the human body, being drunk, sex, music, relentless rhythm, tropical light, the oceanic light, dawn, sunsets, trees, flowers, you know, and actually went on. That's a brief version. So, you know, that's the thing about titles. It's a very funny thing about titling. Of course, a title will give you a kind of, it'll give you a hint, but you don't have to necessarily be tied by it, and it's only the beginning of your journey into the painting.